Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Freeman, and this is
Stefan Campbell. But
yeah. Come on,
tonight is a special night, and I'm
because
a
we
singing,
have
not a singer, for our guest of honor.
Cidny Bullens. How are you, Sid?
I'm good. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, you've toured with Sir Elton, you've recorded with Rod Stewart, and I think Mr. Bob Dylan. You have a new book out, and you're going to be at McCabe's in LA on October 8th with your your
My
band,
trio,
your
my
trio.
trio, The Refugees, with a great singer-songwriter named Wendy Waldman, who's been Grammy nominated, like me, and
Yay.
and
Yay.
Deborah Holland, who was in a great band with the drummer for the Police back in the day. And we've had a trio for 15 years, although there's been big gaps in the middle because I live like 3,000 miles away
You're in
from
Nashville.
I'm in Nashville. I used to be in Maine. I'm in Nashville. Wendy's in Los Angeles and Deborah's in British Columbia. So
Oh,
for us to
nice.
get together, it's it's few and far between, but we are. Yeah.
How
But
did
I'm also a solo artist. I make my own records and got one coming out this month actually on October
Okay,
27th.
let's talk there. Let's talk first about the amazing creative force that you are. So, what's the record called?
The record is called Little Pieces, and it is my first album as Cidny. I was Cidny Bullens for until well into my adult life, and I transitioned 12 years ago and started writing some songs. And it was a slow process because my transition, I kind of hid away for a while from the public eye. Um, but the songs are a couple of them are directly about my transition, and the rest of them are loosely, themed around my transition. So the title of the track is Little Piece of the album is Little Pieces, because and that song is about the little pieces of me falling away when I started transitioning.
right?
And it comes
You
out
know,
October 27th on Kill Rock Stars Records, which is a great independent.
we love Kill Rock Stars.
Yeah,
Fantastic,
yeah,
fantastic. Can I ask you, for you transitioned, you said 12 years ago?
yes.
12 years ago. And so the music that you were doing before your transition, do you
Mhm.
still perform those songs, or do you feel like you
No,
want to
I do, and thank you for the question. No, my career was all as Cidny Bullens. I'm an older
famously,
I'm an
famously?
older adult. I mean, I sang on the Grease movie soundtrack, for crying out loud. That's how far back I go. And so and this is just me. I have many trans friends who do not refer to themselves in their prior identity or life, but I do because I have a whole career as that, and I'm also a mother. I'm the mother of two children. One of my children passed away from cancer at 11, but I still have a daughter, and I have four grandchildren, and that's part of my internal identity is being a mother. I'm not a father, although I am a stepfather now because I got married and have a
Right.
stepdaughter.
Your wife has two children or one?
One child
Okay.
in her 20s, and so I am a stepfather. So it's not complicated, but it's varied. My but I made the choice when I started transitioning to include my prior life because I really can't, at my age, negate what I've done. It's part of my legacy.
Sure, sure. And you have a book out.
I do.
I love the title. Can you, I
Yeah,
want
my
you. Yeah.
my book is called Trans Electric, My Life is a Cosmic Rock Star, and the foreword is by Sir Elton John, who's still a friend of mine. That's the best part of that story, is we're still friends. But can I tell a little story about the
Yeah.
title?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
great title. Great title.
So somebody, when I was first writing the book proposal a couple of years ago, somebody said, well, what's the title? And I said, oh, I don't know, Transelectric. So that came like right out of my mouth, not even thinking, nothing, you know, one of those things. And then I tried for a while to see if I had a better one, and I didn't. But My Life is a Cosmic Rock Star, my wife, Tanya, said to me, because I like subtitles. I'm a titles person. I'm a songwriter. That's my main gig, right? So I love titles, you know, they inspire me, and good titles. So my wife said, well, the subtitle should be, you know, Your Life as a Cosmic Rock Star. And I said, oh no, I cannot do that. I can't, you know, that's too, you know, ego something or other. And, you know, I can't say I'm a rock star, because I didn't feel in my heart and in my mind that I made it as a rock star, you know, because you don't know my name. That's was my thing. But once I started writing the book, and I got halfway through the book, and I realized I'm like writing, and I'm like Lisa alluded to, you know, Elton John, Rod Stewart, you know, Bob Dylan, and then it goes on and on and on
Bonnie
and on
Raitt.
for like, yeah, Bonnie Raitt, you know, the first half of my life is like all these experiences and recordings with famous people, and this and that and this and that, and also my own, when we'll show a picture a little later, you know, my own touring as a young androgynous. That was the word they used back then, androgynous. I was a female rocker, but nobody could tell what I was. And when I got about halfway through the book, I said, oh my God, I really was this far away from being a true rock star. And so I took it. I took the title and said, okay, it is my life as a cosmic, which is the operative word there. That's a right. Cosmic rock star. And
well,
so,
you were on American Bandstand. I mean, that's
do these kids know about American Bandstand?
I think you better tell them, Sid.
The American Bandstand. So, and it was even before my time. I mean, I had an older sister. She's passed now, but I had an older sister who was 8 years older and a brother who's 5 years older. And I remember being a little tiny kid and them watching, you know, American Bandstand. And Dick Clark was the host, and it was literally, you know, people dancing to the singles, they were called back then. I guess they still are, records, the hit records of the day, and they'd be dancing and everything. And all the teenagers in the United States, everyone watched that show. And it lasted until what, the 90 something?
Long
1990 something. I mean, I was on it in 1980. I was on it in 1980, and it was still going strong. But it was an iconic nationwide television show. And yeah, that is still on YouTube, and it's you know, I go like this every time somebody shows it to me, because and I have to say this. So Dick Clark, can I say that he was a misogynist? Can I say that he was?
You can say whatever you want. There is no censorship on this conversation.
Yeah, so he and I didn't know anything. I was in my 20s. I didn't know anything. He was a misogynist and didn't, you know, let's just keep it there. But I was on national television for the first time, and in those clips, the music's fine. It's great. I mean, we're lip syncing to my single at the time. I was trying to be a girl. I mean, I had on my usual, I had on a jumpsuit or something. I never wore women's anything. In fact, I got kicked off a record company because I couldn't wouldn't wear earrings and female
Whoa.
clothing. And yeah, it's another story. That's
The
another,
old days. Those were the old
yeah,
days,
the
you
old
know?
days. You don't look enough like a girl, so see you later.
I mean,
And
you were like Leif Garrett and you were like Christopher
oh my,
Aiken.
do you know how many times people thought I was Leif Garrett or Andy Gibb? One of the two.
Oh, right.
Oh,
By the way,
I
all
had
beautiful.
the hair, right?
All beautiful.
I had that hair.
Yeah.
So
but
but anyway, so Dick Clark, I was trying to be a girl. And so my voice, I had a low voice even in those days, even though I didn't sing low. But and I mean, I'm trying to be a little more, so I go like this. So, but anyway, it's on YouTube if anybody's
how many of our trans kids have tried to be other than what they are in order to please someone other than themselves?
That's true. Like we definitely all have, whether you're trans, gay, lesbian, whoever we are, putting a little bit of ourselves aside to make other people feel comfortable. You know, it would be so interesting to know who we would all be if we didn't have to do that. You know,
it's so interesting because there's a whole bunch of my book that's about that. It's a thread throughout the book. The music is a thread throughout my. It's a memoir. It's a memoir. It's my life. It's all true. I wrote every word, and it's a memoir. But the two threads that go through are my music and my transness.
I'm sorry. The
No, go
music.
ahead.
Were there moments in the book that when you were writing the book, which I know is really I mean, Lisa can, as a writer, can attest to this too, but this idea of wanting to withhold certain things, were there things that you didn't want to share that you did share, or things that you decided not to put in this book, maybe for the next one?
You know, I was really honest in this book.
Sure.
And
You know, this is a no hold bar kind of, here's my heart, it's on the page.
Oh,
there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that I had trepidation about writing about was literally my marriage to my ex-husband. And but I was as honest as I could be without saying too much about him. He was a gay man. I married a gay man. Here I was. And for those of you, you know, when I was growing up, there was no word transgender. There was no word. I mean, I found something in the New York Public Library. There's a story in the book about me going at 19 years old, because I was going to acting school in New York, to the New York Public Library to try to find out what the is wrong with me. You know, why don't I feel like anybody? I didn't feel like the girls who I was, you know, ever that I was going to school with or had gone to school with, or, you know, as all through my life up until that point. And I knew I wasn't I mean, I knew I was a guy, but I didn't know wasn't. So what is going on? And it was not a subject that was in the news or on anybody's lips, or that anybody talked about over dinner, or, you know, it just wasn't in the ether at that time. So I went to the public library and I found a book on gender, and I sat there in the New York Public Library and read this book, and there was a word, and it was transsexual, which was the old term for transgender. And but I couldn't do anything about it. I got all excited because I thought, oh, that's me. At least there's a word for it. At least there's something that I can kind of think about. But there was not one soul on earth.
So there was
I could talk to about it.
There was no one that you could confide in or talk to.
Nobody.
And who do you remember who the first person was that you finally? Because
we all learned about Christine Jorgensen. You know, we all, yes. That was so let's talk about, you know, she was the first public trans woman that I know of. I mean, there were other people who were living as Now, remember, we're talking gender, not sexuality.
Yes,
And
which
Sid,
is
you
great to
know,
clarify. Yeah.
That's
and
right.
we'll get to sexuality as, you know, we choose to or not choose to. But
So what does gender mean to you? Like, what is, when you hear the word gender now, what does that mean?
You know, that's a great question. Because I just want to say I'm learning. I'm old, right? I'm an elder now. And when I'm going to go back a little bit to answer this question.
Mhm.
When I got inspired to transition 12 years ago, it was through a younger friend of mine who's 20 years younger than me, who had moved away and called me one day and said, I transitioned. I thought she, and I'm using that on purpose, was a lesbian. She thought I was a lesbian, even though I was married. I had had relationships with a couple women. And then when she told me that she had transitioned to a man, he blew my mind. And it was the first time someone close to me had transitioned that I knew anybody. Of course, I read, Chaz Bono's book, and I was kind of keeping an eye on it, but I had totally cut myself off from my own feelings, or not feelings, because I knew I was a guy in a woman's body, but I didn't think there was anything I could do about it until my friend called me. And so what I want to say is, when that spark went off, actually it was a nuclear bomb, went off in my brain, I started reading everything I could about being transgender, memoirs, Jameson Green's books, who's a wonderful author on more of an educator and a scholar. Ryan Salin's book. I can't remember all the names, but I started reading everything I could. And I discovered, and this gets back to your question, I had no idea that people felt, back then it was called gender fluid, non-binary. The term non-binary was just kind of coming into play. I had no idea that people felt like both, neither, sometimes one, sometimes the other. When I talk about my gender, so getting to your question, the spectrum of gender, I feel like I'm on flat on one side. I was born a woman. I have woman's parts. I gave birth to 2 children. I was biologically a woman. But I never for 1 minute, not 1 minute of my life, not even 9 months pregnant with my child, not even breastfeeding my kids, did I feel like a woman. And for everybody who's trans knows what I'm talking about. There are people who say, well, how do you know you didn't feel like a woman?
Right.
I know. My brother knows he's a guy. My sisters know they're women. I have 2 female granddaughters and 2 male grandsons. They all know at the moment that who they are, gender-wise. I was opposite from the time I was born, or cognizant anyway. So my feeling on gender is shifting, just like my education of it. I am not going to sit here and tell you I know everything about gender. I want to be as open as I possibly can be. I know that I'm a trans man. That's what I know. I feel like a guy. I'm a guy. I do. My daughter, who's now 40, when I started transitioning, she said, Mom, it's not like anybody's going to know the difference. It's my friends say I'm just the same. I have the same mannerisms, the same. What is different, and it's going a little bit away from your question, but what is different with me is that I'm much more natural now. going back to what you were talking about feeling uncomfortable in the world, I was never, not for 1 second, comfortable in my body until I transitioned.
Sid, I thank you so much for this, because this is so important in what you're saying. And I want to look at some of the photos that you have. But before we do that, and Lisa, I hope you don't mind, I want to go back to the husband situation. Like when you were in that relationship, you were talking about
the husband situation. I like that.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of women can identify.
Yeah.
What's your husband's situation today?
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's not so.
And so he was a gay man. He knew that he was a gay man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? And but you guys had a relationship, like
it's all in the book, let me tell you. But I'm going to say that a lot. But yeah, go ahead.
It wasn't so uncommon for a gay man and a gay woman to partner. I mean, let's go to the Virginia Woolf circle. But but it's always been the case between queers, to survive in a straight society.
Yes.
Ask oneself with a partner that is like mind.
Yeah, exactly. And
excuse me for interrupting, but I just had to do that historical caveat. Now back to Sid.
Absolutely, totally true. There was no gay marriage back then. There was you couldn't even. And we're talking about we got
you
married.
Couldn't say the word. You could not. Right. You get caballish.
That's right. We got married in 1979. So I was in my 20s. He was in his mid 40s. So he's quite a bit older than me. And we were friends. And I mean, the story is in the book. I mean, I had an infatuation with him, and then we had a little. He had never been with a woman before me, ever. He had long-term relationships with men. He was 45 when we got married, and I was. I mean, it's a whole kind of different story, but I was kind of adrift in life. I was a rock star that got cut off by the record business is really what happened. And I was burnt out. I was burnt out trying to be a rock star, and Dan was a safe space, it seemed like. And so I kind of and we were friends, and he's a caretaker, and I needed caretaking at the time. And not to put it in that little box, because it was a lot more than that, but we were friends. But and then the weird thing is once we got married in LA. I mean, we were living here, and but we moved back east and decided to have a child. And that was when we both started feeling like, oh, I guess we better kind of try to be, normal, try to look like we're normal, upstanding citizens.
Heteronormalness, is that a word? That would be one word.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So we moved to Connecticut, and it was like, yeah, Westport, Connecticut, for those of you who don't know, is like the straight capital. Well, I don't know anymore. I shouldn't say that. But it's a very affluent suburb of New York City, and on the Gold Coast of Connecticut. And we somehow morphed into, he was the head of the school board of the Montessori school, and I did not bake cookies, he did. But I played music for the kids at the school, at the kindergarten. But it was a strange life, but it was very uncomfortable. Now, let me just say one caveat before we go on. I loved my children. I loved having my babies.
Yeah.
And for that reason, even with losing Jesse at 11 years old, which is a whole nother story, I loved that I had children. So that's the caveat.
And might I say in the chat, somebody said that you reminded them of Freddie Mercury and his female partner. You know, it's just more common than we discuss because not every person is as open as Sid. So
Yeah.
I knew Freddie Mercury, by the way.
Oh my
I should have
God.
put a picture in there of Freddie Mercury and me, which I have, but yeah.
Well, you must next time. Let's look at your pictures and see.
Yeah.
Now, somebody else said, "What a legend you are." You know, I'm
Yes.
looking at the
Yeah.
chat box a little bit. Don't want to embarrass you too much, Sid, but you're gonna
Sid,
have to hear it.
Sid,
All right.
it's amazing. Sid, it's amazing. I want to, and while we're talking about this, maybe and going through your, photos, because I want to hear more about you being like, what burned you out? Was it because you were trying to fit into a space, not being yourself? Was it in the industry? Was it creatively? Was it?
Oh, let's end with that. That would be the fireworks at the end. Sid, tell us what Cidny is doing here.
Yeah.
Well, that's me at 3.
Uh-huh.
So you can see where my head was at. It's like, I never wore a shirt ever in the summertime, never wore a shirt. And that's me just, with my crooked smile, which I still have today. Many a dentist has said, "Don't you want to fix that?" No, I don't. I like my crooked jaw. And so that's me flexing, trying to be, I don't know who I was copying or what I was thinking, but it's an image that I love because that shows you who I was at 3.
That's right. And where were you in this picture?
I was in my backyard, I think, in Massachusetts. I grew up in Massachusetts and in Maine. So that's when I was really little and we were living in Massachusetts. All right, so that's me at 15. And again, that's, and don't forget, this is the mid and late 60s. So it's, Beatle time and the Rolling Stones and, all that. So that's the hair. And
what a great photo. What a great photo.
that's
Wow.
me on stage with Elton John. And yeah, I have many of those pictures. And
Sid, you were playing guitar?
I was a background vocalist. Mostly I did play guitar and a couple of things, but mostly I was a background vocalist. But the thing about Elton was he really brought me forward, like in this picture. He would bring me out and showcase me, whether it was singing a duet or throwing me into there's some great stories in the book about things that he did, but he used to throw me into the crowd and he did a lot of stuff. So he showcased me. I could spend an hour on Elton. He's a wonderful friend. So that
looks like a rock star to me. I remember that photo.
Great
I
picture.
remember that.
So that's the same session as this, which became, this photo was on my first album that came out in 1979 called Desire Wire. And believe it or not, I didn't know that the rest of these pictures existed until about 3 months ago.
No.
And I was going through boxes in my basement because I'm being inducted into the University of Maine LGBTQ library, and
and your Superman t-shirt.
I still have that t-shirt and it's in pristine condition. So I'm not stupid. I knew I had to keep it. But that I was going through boxes and suddenly I saw the stack of slides, all in the little, covers. And I pulled them out and it was that session and they were still good. There was only like 10 out of hundreds, not hundreds of that. There were lots of different costume, clothes changes and everything. It was like a several day session. And I went, oh my God. So that's a picture that I found just 3 months ago.
Beautiful. Wow.
That's my wife, Tanya. So there is life after transition, even for an old guy. And one of the, and by the way, I just need to say, I suffer from depression and anxiety.
Mm.
Terrible. I have, it's daunting. And I still do. I have my whole life and I still struggle. I say that because I often don't know what's going to come in my life. I struggle with it. And there's a saying in recovery rooms that I've hung on to. I've been in recovery for 47 years. I was a drug addict and an alcoholic for a short period in my 20s, early 20s. And I was fortunate enough to get clean. But there's a saying, they say, don't drink or use 5 minutes before the miracle happens.
Mm.
And I have held on to that. It makes me want to cry.
Yeah.
For my entire life. Because miracles do happen. Now, I lost a child. I also know this tragedy. I watched my daughter take her last breath just after her 11th birthday. So life sucks a lot of the time. And it took me 10 years to get through that, not through, I'm never through, but to get kind of to a place where I could breathe again. But miracles do happen. And Tanya, my wife, is one of those miracles. I thought, who's going to want an old trans man? I was single. And lo and behold, there she was.
Thank you so much, Sid.
That's it.
That's important for kids to hear. What is your process for songwriting? Do you just sit down and pop, it happens, and then you rework it, or do you nurse it?
All of the above.
Mm-hmm.
I have no set way of songwriting. I mean, obviously, I have to sit down with an instrument, but sometimes I'll be driving in the car and a line or a title or something will be, going through my head. I do a lot of driving. I drive cross country. I drive up to Maine from Nashville all the time because my daughter and grandkids are there, and I have, I have a house up there, so I'm always driving. I like to drive. I prefer driving, and I oftentimes have a notebook on the passenger seat with a pen. Then
you mean like this, Sid?
Yeah, like that. That's yeah. Here we are, right?
Yeah,
like this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just in case the kids don't know what it looks like.
They don't know what this is. A pen, and it writes cursive too. But so it'll come anyway at any time. Sometimes if I'm really, really fortunate, it's like channeling something where something just kind of comes out, words and music. I write both. Or I can write either. If I'm writing with other people, if somebody needs a help with a lyric, I can help with that. If somebody needs help with a tune or a melody or a chord structure, I can do that too. So, but when I write solo by myself, which I do for my own records for the most part, I write both words and music. And so either can come first. So I have no set way of doing it. I will say that, and I haven't been very prolific in the past couple of years because, I mean, I wrote the songs that are coming out on this album a couple years ago and back because I've been wrote my book. So I'm not that multi-talented where I can do everything at the same time.
It sounds really amazing. I mean, I have so many questions, but thank you for, like we said, we want this to be a place of where being vulnerable is fine because there's no judging of suffering here. And in Buddhism, they have a phrase that's, turning your poison into your medicine in some way. So take that as you will. But it sounds to me that you are taking your medicine, to some of the things that you've been through an experience. How did you and Tanya meet, if I can ask?
Well,
We can say that for another.
yes, and I was hiding away in Maine after I started my transition. I got off the road with, I happen to be on the road with my trio here. I do solo stuff too as myself, but so I was transitioning. Some people knew I was Cindy, some people knew I was Cidny. You know, it was like, I can't deal with the, you know, the confusion. Plus, I had not physically changed all that much. So it was, other than having top surgery. So it was just too much for me. And I went back to Maine and I got a job, and a regular job, which I hadn't had in like 30 years or something. But the creative, it once you're, you know, if you are a creative, it just doesn't stop. You know,
That's right. That
it
is
can
right.
lay aside for a while. It can, you know, calm down, lay aside. But at some point, it's going to start bubbling up. So what started bubbling up for me is I thought, well, I want to tell my story. I'm not ready to write a book at that time. How do I tell my story? Because I knew I had a story. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll write a one-person show.
Mm.
And now people call it one woman show, one man show. I call it a one-person show because it was about Cindy becoming Cidny. And so I started to think about it, but I knew that that was out of my range of doing. I mean, I knew I had the material, I knew I had the songs, I wanted live songs in it. I knew what the arc of the story was, meaning I knew it where it began and where it ended, and I knew the subject matter that was going to be in there, the 3 blocks. You know, my bells and whistles of my career, my family life, the death of my daughter, which is part of the family life, and then my transition. So there were three things in the arc, but I didn't know how to put 40 years of life in there. I just didn't. So I went on the internet and I started looking for classes or courses or something on how to write a one man or one woman or one person show, solo show. And after a while, I found this person who was in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I loved. I had been there several times. I loved it out there. I was in Maine, who did a boot camp on solo shows. And 4 days, you have your outline. I thought, that's me. So I called her up and went out there a few months later. And long story short, after she guided me, I wrote the story, I wrote the show, but she guided me in what was going to go. I went out there and then I went back and wrote it over the next year. And when, after it was all done, she came to my first reading in Maine and told me, because we were doing Skype back then, people, Skype, not Zoom. And we were Skyping every week, and she came to my house and said, you know what? I'm attracted to you. And of course, me because I run in the opposite direction, if anybody says that, I was like, oh no, not happening. And even though I was attracted to her, anyway, so we're married. That's the way that's.
Yeah,
and that's not in the book.
Great.
How we met is in the book. How we met, and that little bit I just told you is in the book. But it ends there. The book ends with.
You are a storyteller. You are a great storyteller. So.
Before we end, Stefan,
Yes.
I want to go back to your question that you were asking. And then I have one more. Let's hear that question. Can you remind us again what you were? It was very solid.
There's so many, but I think it was going back to the music business and what burnt you out. Like what was the burnout feeling? Like, was it from, so was it from trying to fit into other people's boxes? Was it the creative process? Was it the, just life in general?
It was not the creative process. It was the business. Because I'm not in any of the early female rocker books, but I was the first female rocker to play electric guitar. I jumped off pianos. I was like Mick Jagger with a guitar. I was like, crazy rock and roller. And I wrote all my own songs, produced my records, most of them, not all of them. And so I was me. I was the songwriter, the artist, the musician. I put my own band together, all of that stuff, the producer. And they didn't want that. I mean, they just didn't want it. But I don't want to blame it all on the music business, but that was the instigator to my burnout. It was too hard. It became too hard to be myself in the business. Now, it wasn't the audiences. It was never between me and my audience. It was all the middlemen, the agents, the record companies, the promoters, the radio stations, all of that. They just didn't quite know what to do with me. So when I got burned out, it was my choice to leave the business. I could have hung in there, but I just didn't. I just said, I can't do this anymore. And it really was because I felt like no one was ever going to see me for who I was. Wow. Yeah. I knew I was as good as any rock star out there. And I really was. And I'm not saying that from an ego place. I really was as good a performer, a songwriter, and singer, whatever, as anybody out there at the time. But I also knew that, for example, people would say, well, we've already got a woman on our label, a woman.
Yeah.
It's going to be twice as hard for you to make it in this business. Why? Because you're a woman. Now, this is back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. And and of course, in my head, I'm going, what's that got to do with anything? I mean, I wasn't thinking of transitioning or anything. I mean, I knew who I was. I knew I was a guy and all that stuff inside. And I'm thinking, I just didn't understand it. It was just, I just couldn't take it all in, and I burned out.
So when it was like Hart, like Nancy Wilson, and all the way to like between Nancy Hart and Joan Jett.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like
Pat Benatar first.
Yeah, and there's a
my
few
idol.
other.
Yeah.
Pat Benatar, incredible. Yeah. So you have this, so for you as a pioneer, when you were seeing like the industry trying to make adjustments to women in rock, and at that time, what did that look like to you through your lens?
All right, so here's a little tidbit. I was making my third album, and the head of the record company called me into his office, and he said, as I alluded to before, but there's another thing he said, we want you to wear dangly earrings and tank tops, something like that. We want you to be more like Pat Benatar.
Right.
Now, I came out before Pat Benatar. I had already been nominated for a Grammy for my single Survivor before Pat Benatar ever came on the scene. So my first single, Survivor, did get some attention, and I was nominated for a Grammy. Then Pat Benatar came along. So this is the thing about being a woman. Nobody said to Paul Simon, we want you to be more like Paul McCartney. Nobody said to Mick Jagger, we want you to be more like, or to Freddie Mercury, we want you to be more like Mick Jagger, or David Bowie, we want you to be more like Freddie Mercury. Nobody said that. So when they called me in and said, we want you to be more like Pat Benatar, I said, if you want Pat Benatar, you go sign Pat Benatar. And I walked out, and that was the end, and that album never came out.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That's an important conviction, standing up for your convictions.
Well, yeah, I didn't make a record for 10 more years. That's the conviction. So, you know, I mean, but that's my life. That was, I could not bend for anybody.
in the knee. Did you
I
see the
tried.
young winner, the whole young winner, the Masters book and the whole controversy behind
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it's a mindset. It's a certain mindset that you were dealing with that young winter expresses still to this day.
yeah. And it still exists today, even though women have pushed through, thank goodness. You know, they're fantastic, as your kids all know. There are some fantastic women musicians out there now. I mean, just tons of them. There were back then.
Right.
It's just that we weren't given the opportunity, that weren't given the space to be who we were.
Do you think MTV changed any of that at the time, or
Well, if you were femme fatale, darling,
Yeah,
there weren't, I mean,
MTV changed everything, not just because what MTV did, and it's another subject, but what MTV did is that you had to be good looking. The music mattered less than your appearance. And that's what MTV killed, was the fact that you had to look a certain way. You had to be, you know, dress a certain way.
You didn't see a lot of Fanny videos, did you? No.
No.
So
No. And Fanny was around when I was around. They were a group. So I give them kudos.
All female for our younger
They
listeners.
were there when I was there. When I say I was the first, I mean solo, you know.
No, I know what you're.
When I look at those pictures of you, I feel like you were made for MTV at that time. Like your look, your persona, your everything was so visual. You made visual imagery. You know, even when we saw that picture of you on stage with Elton, I mean, you have figured out a way to make yourself stand out next to Elton John. You know?
Well, I don't think I figured it out. I just was up there with him. But
I think oh, excuse me, keep going.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think what you did, and there's no denying it, is that you cleared the field for the next rock stars who are now very commonly and comfortably 100% of who they are. Actors, writers, you know, it is people like you who led the way. And that is heroic. So, you know, I know that there are some things that did not fold out the way it might have been planned, but there's so much legacy. And to me, and maybe to Stefan and some other people who are involved with this conversation, for kids who are queer, and we talk to kids 13 to 24, even though 24 is a young adult, I pardon my, you know, putting everybody into one crop, but what you've done is made it possible for other people to speak up. And I want you to end our conversation today talking to kids, queer, trans, non-binary, you know, gender neutral, whatever. And what would you advise? And I know that's kind of putting you on a spot, but since I've put you up on a pedestal, ha.
Yeah. You know, it's really going back to what I said about the miracles, because life sucks sometimes, you know, it really does. Nobody gets out of here free, I say, you know. And, you know, when I was young, I didn't have the resources. Using the resources like you are here today is so important. There is support. There is love, not just support, but love out there, you know, for us as people. Sometimes I hang on by a thread. Even today, I hang on. I've got so much going on in my life, good things, but I also have issues. I have stuff going on that's not pleasant, you know, with people or situations, and I don't know what's going to happen. I have to trust. I have to find those people who I trust. I have to find, even if it's one person on one day that I trust, that I can share with, that I know is on my side, in my corner, who loves me or at least supports me, who, nobody's going to understand my life, but somebody might be able to empathize with me. And we all have different stories. We all have different challenges. I wouldn't be alive today were it not for support and support groups. So that's my thing.
That's it. That's Sid, do you have a website or
I do. It's Cidny Bullens, CIDNYBULLENS.com. And I'm on Facebook. I have both an official page and my personal page. I'm kind of 5,000 friends-ish on my personal page, but my band page is open, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I am not on TikTok. Actually, I have the thing, but I'm not on it. But
I'm not on TikTok either. So
yeah.
haha. Sid,
But you can find me, and my email. Can I just say,
if you want to give an email, that's lovely.
If anybody wants to email me, and please forgive me if it takes me a little bit of time to get back to you, but I will, is Sid, CID, at CidnyBullens.com. And, if you have any questions that haven't been answered, just give me a little bit of time. I'm in the middle of but I will get to you.
Sid, I love you.
I love you.
And Sid, I love you too. And I love you, Sid. And
Thank you.
I could keep going for 20 more hours. I can see what Tanya sees, So
yeah, she sees me all right. She does. She's a unbelievable. So
congratulations.
Thank you so much for having me. I wish you all well.
Good. Everyone, thank you for joining.
Thank you, everybody.